The myth told us people turned to stone if they looked directly at Medusa. But what I experienced was her gaze was the very thing that helped my freeze begin to thaw. How do you talk about your life and offerings when it all seems to be continuously transforming? And how do you allow yourself to be visible when you've been tending an invisible process that's delicate and cannot be rushed? This video shares frameworks and practices that have been helping me anchor myself within the tension of these questions, not only as I've been rebuilding my website and offerings, but as I've been healing from the trauma of a sexual violation. Please be mindful this content may be potentially triggering, and take good care of yourself. Centering in the rituals and mythic characters who have been supporting my healing and sharing them with others is a way of furthering my own integration. And my hope is that by the end of this video, the inspiration that has been guiding the creative unfoldment within myself is more deeply felt and recognized within you. This spring, 4 months into EMDR therapy, something profoundly significant unfolded in my therapist's office. The night before, I had been working on a painting of Medusa that I'd begun a few weeks earlier. Medusa was a devoted priestess of the goddess of wisdom, Athena, who, after Medusa was raped by Poseidon, was then punished and banished for the incident, and later murdered. That evening, Medusa's eyes fluttered closed as if in a dreamlike escape from reality, suddenly opened wide. Her gaze struck me like a thunderbolt. I slowly put down my brush, crawled into bed, and brought her with me to my session the following morning. And while initially I could barely bring myself to look at the canvas before me, I eventually found the courage to turn towards her. And what I saw surprised me. The recognition felt so deep. Being witnessing her, alongside my therapist, seemed to help me connect with the parts of myself that somewhere along the way had also become exiled. Through the mirror of Medusa, whose name means guardian or protectress, the felt sense of agency that my body had been unable to access in the moment of my own Medusa trauma from 2 years earlier was viscerally emerging in my body for the first time. Contemplating the cosmos as a map of meaning is one of the frameworks that's helped me stay grounded, especially when life just isn't making sense. The inner-outer cosmology brings me comfort and connects me with the mythic Pegasus, who I have loved since I was a child. Pegasus, born of Medusa's blood when she was murdered by Perseus, is the winged horse who traverses the heavens carrying Zeus's thunderbolts. Yet he's also grounded in physical reality. Wherever his hooves touch the earth, it's said that water springs forth, inspiring the muses. Earlier this spring, I was startled to notice how transiting planets were activating the very characters from Medusa's mythology in my own natal chart, as if the invitation to reclaim her story was being written in the heavens. My first ritual for connecting with Medusa was a simple charcoal sketch. It's the medium that grounds me into creative practice with relative ease. Alone on a windy island on the Scorpio full moon, I noticed anguish, sorrow, loneliness, and denial flashing before me like the light moving across the ocean waves as the face of the protectress began emerging. But I also noticed a subtle grace and a sense of acceptance as I gazed upon her. Some capacity to see and know beyond what was even seeable or knowable. That first moment of really seeing Medusa was the first time I can ever remember crying in front of my art. And I don't know whose tears came first. Later that day, I discovered a fascinating YouTuber who was speaking of the nuances and complexities of Medusa's myth. Her video led me down a rabbit hole where I discovered the next integrative practice, which had to do with mapping out one's personal tree of life through narrative therapy. I'll link to it in the comments so you can try it out for yourself. What I discovered through this practice was I also needed a way to prune back and compost a lot of the roots, not as a mere severing, but as a way of creating space and giving nourishment to the soil, while revitalizing the tree of my being. That's when I turned to the descansos ritual in Women Who Run with the Wolves, which I also adapted and modified. In the chapter on the boundaries of rage and forgiveness, Clarissa Pinkola Estes speaks to the necessity of witnessing ungrieved life experiences and giving them a proper burial. In her book, she calls this practice descansos, or places of rest. It's the kind of emotional alchemy that revivifies the creative life and deepens connection to the soul and instinctual self. She describes working with the mini crosses as seen on the roadways as symbols to mark these moments laid to rest. But instead, I chose the symbol of the butterfly, creating each one from handmade paper that began as journal entries 11 years earlier. Working with time, space, and sound, I traveled back through the linear sequence of my life, all the way to the womb. But in order to really begin, I needed something more. And so a third practice emerged, co-created through the wisdom of my body and the elements of nature. Lacing up my worn-out running shoes, I hit the road for a ritual run. Getting into a rhythmic meditative jog, the distances between telephone poles served as markers to the chronological timeline of my life. Running my body and somatic memory back through time and into the womb of the sea, taking off my clothing and plunging into the cold Atlantic Ocean, I emerged anew. As the high noon sun shone down directly above my head, surrounded by a vast blue sky, I ran my tingling, newly emerged self all the way back into present time. It felt like an eco-psycho-kinesthetic reweaving, midwifed through nature. Rooted in my body and in a felt sense of connection to the Great Mother and Creator of creation, I took out my scissors, needle, and thread. And for the next 3 hours, I sat, open and relaxed, bearing witness to the roots of my life that had gone unseen. I was surprised at how what I thought would feel big felt small, and what I thought was insignificant needed more space. Scribing love notes on the wings of each butterfly, I pinned them one by one to a map with red thread, speaking aloud prayers of forgiveness as tears fell freely. As the butterflies filled the map, moving towards some unknown frontier, I felt the ground of my being nourished and at peace. And all this considered, here is the most important thing. As helpful as maps of meaning can be, the most vital framework for this healing and integration has been community. When I first began sharing the Medusa art with my myth and memoir group, something in me shifted. The sense of exile that I had been experiencing in my closest relationships ever since the incident began to feel like less of a life sentence. The way these women had encouraged me to give EMDR another try 6 months earlier gave me the courage to try again, even though I was reluctant, angry, and ashamed to admit that I still needed help. For 2 years, I had struggled to feel seen or heard, and I wasn't even aware that what I most needed was a mirror to the very anger that had been exiled. Instead, I had blamed myself and started withdrawing. In EMDR, working with Medusa's gaze allowed me to access a felt sense of agency in my body and make gentle contact with the vulnerable parts that I had been unable to face directly. And just as Athena reintegrated Medusa onto her shield as a source of strength, I began to experience how Medusa's presence through art, myth, and therapy could help protect, heal, and reweave the story of my own life. Sharing this video is part of my medicine. It's a practice. It's a practice of being seen, of seeing myself and tending to what's still unfolding in a visible way. And in the spirit of healing and healing through community, I've linked below to some circles that have been nourishing me, as well as to how you can connect with me more personally. My hope is that this story has inspired you in some way, or even helped you experience Medusa in a new light. I would love to hear from you in the comments.